I think I owe you a recording, if I'm not mistaken, from our last. So,
Don't worry, we're compiling them to like greatest hits.
I know.
It should.
A trilogy.
It should be recording now. Does anybody see anything saying that we're being
I don't
recorded?
think it's recording.
It is.
In one.
Yes,
Oh, it
it
is.
is.
Okay.
We got a notification that says it was set. I got a notification that said it was being recorded. So
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Appreciate that. Let me just, this is wrong. Sorry. Let me just back that up.
So I'm afraid we're going to have a few more people than we did with our very first meeting. Schools have started to let out. Miss Graham, can you mute your device? So I want to be sure that everyone knows to type your name and your location and position in the chat box. That is the only way we can give you contact hours for this training. If your name's not in the chat box, I don't know that you're there. So there's a group of people watching in one area on one screen, which is totally fine, but all of those people need to have their names in the chat box.
What's happening here, sir?
We're already having some technical greatness. All right, it is 1:32, which means it's time for me to stop playing around with the slideshow and get this whiz bang show on the road. While I call up the proper slide right here, just say that it is nice to see everybody again, and nice to see those of you who we haven't yet had the opportunity to meet. Welcome to another Wednesday afternoon professional development, where we will be today talking all about the building blocks mathematics curriculum and how it integrates with interfaces with focus on pre-K in a whole variety of different ways.
Yes, so we touched a little bit on it when we did a training earlier with folks. So some things might be a little bit of a repeat, but you know, it was good there. It's probably going to be good. We can go a little bit more in depth here. This is only going to be a 3-hour training, but the building blocks curriculum is also one that probably takes ongoing PD as well. So what we're going to try to cover here today is we're going to take a look at the structure, sort of the framework of building blocks, take a look at the teacher's manual, look at, again, how it integrates with focus. I mean, in a lot of ways, saying that it's separate from focus is probably not an accurate description of it, because it really is integrated fully into focus. But hopefully it'll get you all started on being able to take it apart yourselves. Okay, so without saying, building blocks is the math component, or the math curriculum that we brought into the OWL. Originally, when the OWL was implemented in Boston, the OWL does have math activities. Those of you who've done OWL before know that. And we really didn't feel like it was hardy enough for some of the goals that we had set for math instruction. So we brought in building blocks, which was developed by the University of Buffalo, and we are going to hear from the creator, the author of it, to also give us a little bit of background.
Yes.
So before we actually get into building blocks, we want to start with a discussion, hear from you all about, we'll take a couple of minutes to think about this. And this question has to do with, what do you see in your programs right now? Not what we want to see, but what is it that we do see in preschool classrooms? What does math in preschool look like?
Sound like, and feel like.
Yes. So we'll just have a quick minute of reflection, and then we'll have folks kind of share out those three answers to those three questions.
Right. So let's just kind of, we can popcorn things out since there are so many of us. We can just kind of jump in and share some thoughts here. But what does the mathematics that you are seeing, hearing, experiencing in classrooms, as Abby said, what does it look like, sound like, feel like to you? Paint us a few pictures, if you will. Hands-on, Marissa, thank you over in the chat. I appreciate that. So hands-on kinds of situations. Okay, so children working with materials. Okay,
Yeah,
Definitely
feels
interactive.
interactive,
right?
great.
Lots of manipulatives,
Okay.
Okay.
What's
exploration.
it sound like?
It's noisy.
Exploration.
Exploration, noisy, but a bit
Noisy.
noisy.
Yeah, all those little wooden blocks like clacking together.
That's it.
I like that. A good noisy. All right.
Yes. Counting, singing, exciting, physically active, acting things out. Oh, this is great.
Counting cereal during breakfast. Absolutely. That's a nice part to be thinking about, that idea that math is all around us, right? It's during breakfast.
Well, we didn't have what does math taste like, but that I know you wanted to put what does math taste like, but that would be a good one. Like what does it taste like? Apple Jacks.
Right.
Yep. Exploration. What does it look like in your classrooms when you walk into your preschool classrooms? What does it look like on the walls? The kids work.
Busy.
Okay. Moving around. Okay. What does it look like on your walls? Lots of anchor charts with numbers.
Kid friendly,
Sets.
creative and colorful, individuality. That's very good. Helen, could you talk to us just a little bit more about the kid friendly piece? What exactly stands out for you that makes it feel or look kid friendly to you?
Well, I would say that there are more pictures, and these pictures are used by the students, and it just makes everything more readable.
Okay.
Okay.
So some visuals and images. Absolutely great. Wonderful. And I like Candace's point here about things being posted at the children's level.
Absolutely.
Their eye level. Sure.
Nice. Can someone describe to us what are anchor charts in your programs? What do you mean by that? What's on an anchor chart? Kid-made charts. Okay. Yeah.
And they're going over skills that have been covered in the classroom, and preferably where the teacher is making the chart with them, but the children are involved in making of the chart, where they can always refer back to the chart to get answers to their questions they may have.
Yes.
That's great. I like that co-constructed sort of a situation that you're describing right there.
Because I think when you describe it that way, it feels like it's an instructional tool rather than a decoration, right? Because sometimes we do also see, sometimes we also see that in classrooms. I think all of these descriptions of what your classrooms, math in your classrooms look, sound, and feel very encouraging and sounds really hearty. At the same time too, I know that for us in Boston, it was a range, right? So you definitely had exactly some of the things that you're talking about here. And then you also had things, like I said, used for decoration, or kind of like, what's a multiplication chart doing in a preschool classroom? And so we definitely, this is really encouraging because we really want to calibrate what we want our math in our classrooms to look like. So some of the things that you all mentioned that our focus classrooms have in our math classrooms, yes, very much child created, child interpreted, hands-on, individuality, materials accessible at their level, engaging materials. And I also really appreciate in this classroom, they're very inviting, right? So they're very, kids can really indulge in their curiosity, and they can use them in multiple ways, right? And also over there on the far right it's also integrated with the literacy component, because in this is the theme of shadows and reflection. So yes, this is a math opportunity where they're graphing, but it's very much connected to the unit themes and the unit read aloud. So yay, this is definitely what we want to be seeing in our preschool classrooms.
And interestingly enough,
oh,
a number of the things that both you and we have just been describing in terms of what you're seeing in your classrooms, in terms of what we are looking at up here in Boston in terms of mathematics, connect quite directly to our instructional practices and guiding principles from Focus on Pre-K itself.
And, obviously we want to see those principles and those practices enacted in our daily classroom components and see the interaction between all of those. So everything people have been saying, colorful, engaging, that again is guided by the idea that children are capable, that they're active agents. When we talk later on in the training about teachers using math opportunities to document and assess learning, teachers as researchers, and also teachers as facilitators of learning. So I think we're off to a really great start. So one thing we're going to start with, it sounds like a lot of folks here have a really great idea, a great pedagogical approach to what math is, but also because we are going to be also mirroring what we would be training with teachers, we're going to start with a little bit of reading, actually, in a math training. And we are going to go off into breakout rooms and read 3 articles that we typically use when we're training the math piece of Focus, because these 3 really do address much of what we talk about in Focus math building blocks. So one is math in the preschool. The second room, you're going to be reading calendar time for young children, good intentions gone awry. And then the third one, math play. So don't think there's going to be super surprising ideas in here, but I think it's a good frame for us to start working on, because again, the curriculum is also, the practices and the content is also research based. So we want to frame it in that way.
So the task more specifically for each of the 3 groups with the 3 articles is to summarize the big ideas, take note of anything that surprised you, that perhaps challenges you in terms of your thinking about things, or anything that might have sort of affirmed or confirmed thinking that you have already been doing. And then take note of anything that you think might be either easy for your classrooms to just sort of move along with and move into, or things that you feel might be a little bit more challenging perhaps for your classrooms potentially. We are going to give you about 15 minutes in your groups to both read and then have a brief discussion with your colleagues. We'll come back together, and when we come back together, the hope will be that each of the 3 groups will sort of teach your colleagues a little bit about what it is you have been reading. So if you can just bear with me for a moment, I have to sort of big screen the slideshow here so that I can toss it into the chat for you. So just bear with me while I do that real quick, and I'm going to make sure I also have the sharing permissions set so that everyone will be able to actually open this up. So just you can.
Oh, see, it's already restricted. You got to make sure that it's accessible to everybody.
I know. I learned from the PD I did yesterday, where
yes, just hours ago.
I forgot to do this, and so I'm going to make sure I do it now. Okay. And here we go. There's that. And let me get the chat up here somewhere. Where's the chat? There it is. Okay. So now the slide deck should be in the chat for everybody. I will break you out into 3 groups. And you can also, when you open up the slide deck and look at this slide, you're going to click on the actual article itself, and that will open up the PDF. And you can see those 3 prompts too that I was just discussing down in the notes section of the slide. So hold on just a minute. Breakout rooms are here.
Wow, these can be some pretty big rooms.
Well, how many people do we have, Abby, actually?
Abby?
We have 89 rooms. You know what? Maybe we should double up. Do you think we should double up and create 6 rooms instead of?
Yeah, let's do 6.
Yeah, let's do that. So what we're gonna do here, I'm just gonna make a note of this in the chat so everybody can refer back to it. We'll actually do rooms 1 and 4 is Article 1 is mathematics in the preschool. In the preschool. Rooms 2 and 5 will be good intentions. You're all in the same room right now, but you won't be in a moment. 3 and 6 will be math play. All right. So hold tight. You'll be swept away into your breakout rooms right about now.
Friends, see you in a few minutes.
Hi, we are back, and you are back.
Everyone's back. I hear that some people might be having some computer problems. Y'all are having storms down there.
Stay safe,
Yes,
please, everybody.
So let us know if some of that, if we can help on this end, but can't help with the storms, unfortunately. So let's have a little share out of the articles that you read. It sounds like many of the ideas that people expressed at the top of the PD might have been confirmed in the first and the third article, but let's hear some ideas from folks. Anybody who read the math in preschool want to share out some big ideas or some important takeaways that you want to share with your colleagues?
I'm room 1, and I can share 3 things from ours. We talked about how the perspective of 2 different children can be 2 different things. So they were talking about my tower's builder, no, my tower's builder bigger, my tower is bigger. And they were talking about how one might be taller and one might be wider, but they both think that their tower is bigger. We also talked about how math is everywhere. It's not just in a math lesson. You can also teach math in a reading lesson or a science lesson. And then the third one we talked about was measurement, how instead of measuring with just little cubes or even a ruler once they get to that part, you can measure with a string or with something they're more familiar with and can connect to more.
Excellent.
Thank you for that. Abby, you were just telling me a story about some interesting measurement you were doing this afternoon.
I was just, I thought that was interesting. I think that's absolutely true, because I think that what's part of this article too is that children are already thinking mathematically from a very young age. Even infants are noticing sort of distances and math concepts. They don't necessarily have words for it. So I think that that's part of the progression, right? Using non-standard units of measure. It's funny. I was at a storage area that we have where we keep a lot of our supplies, and there was this tape measure, and it had a picture of a clown on the side, and I was like, so is this clown inches or is this actual inches, like clown shoe inches? But yeah, I think that kids do notice like differences and can use and should be encouraged to use non-standard units of measurement.
It reminds me, actually, there's a bridge here in Boston. There's a river that runs. There are 2 cities. There's the city of Boston and the city of Cambridge, and a river runs between the 2 cities. And there's a bridge across that river. And a number of decades ago, some students at MIT, the university, came up with the idea to measure the span of that bridge by laying one of their classmates end over end across the bridge. And the classmate's name, his name was Smoot. That was his last name. And they determined that the bridge across the Charles River was, I don't know what it was. It was probably 30 or 40 smoots in length, and so that's just a little bit of folklore from up here.
And that was done by like MIT engineers. So they've got some kind of on another level.
Non-standard measurement works for all sorts of folks.
Works for smoots as well. Excellent, though. Yes, and definitely we'll see that in the rest of the training about that math is everywhere. Absolutely. And also the integration with other content areas, particularly literacy.
So anything that you found surprising or, something that sort of caught you off guard, perhaps, in the article? Groups 1 or 4. mathematics in the preschool?
One of the things that we looked at, and that was in group 4. Hi, my name is Shawana Tucker. We was talking about how in the first part of the argument, we were saying something about, simple learning to complex learning, how children, it's best to teach children complex learning than the simple learning, because their brains are built to deal with that. So they can deal with multiple things at one time. That stood out to me. And we was talking about, modeling the language. They don't know the language. And when they started investigating and going into depth into learning things on their own, that, you're the guide. You can teach them that type of language. That stood out.
Yes.
In that last paragraph.
Oh, I'm sorry, we lost you.
Oh, we lost
That-
your,
oh,
go ahead, finish.
It's going in and out. I'm sorry. That last paragraph also stood out. It stood out. It summed the whole article up.
That is great, actually. I really appreciate what you were just sharing right there, particularly the piece about the simple versus the complex thinking, because in a lot of ways that goes back to, at least in my mind, it goes back to sort of thinking about our image of the child and what we think children are capable of, right? And this is just another example of children being capable of more than we often give them credit for, so that's a really nice point. Thanks for that. Let's maybe shift to article 2. Should we move to the next article?
Sure.
Abby?
Yep. So this room 2 or 4, 5, if you read The Calendar Time for Young Children, Good Intentions Gone Awry. Tell us some things that jumped out for you.
Okay, I don't have as much wait time as y'all.
Okay.
I will just say, as a person who works on the special education side of things, and so I've worked with children with delays, I love the idea of a visual schedule. I've done that for years and years and years, and it not only helps our children who have delays, but our children who are dual language learners and things like that. It's a benefit for everyone to use a visual schedule, and I've done that in a variety of ways. I know there's a million ways to do it, and it also makes me realize that back in my younger days, when I was a classroom teacher and had that calendar, I hope, well, first of all, I hope I wasn't hurting anybody with it, but I also think that they were learning valuable skills. It just wasn't necessarily the ones that I thought they were learning. They don't necessarily need, the concepts of the specific, well, as I said in the group, it's a big box with some numbers on it. It doesn't necessarily mean anything to them, but the idea of learning first, second, third, and, the order that things happen, the sequence, those are really important things for kids to know instead.
Yeah. Say anyone else who read that article, it's called Good Intentions Gone Awry. So what were those good intentions, and why did they go awry with calendar?
One of the things that that jumped out to me was that the children can't understand or talk about future time at 4 years old. They learn that later, maybe between 7 and 10 years old, but they can talk about some past. So the future is not quite as important to them as the current or the past.
Yes.
And I also, like Candace was talking about the visual schedule with the pictures, I also like the fact that it said a linear representation of the schedule, because we read left to right. The alphabet line goes from A to Z linear. Some number charts are not linear, but some are. And it just, it made sense to me that we should do the schedule linearly, so that the children can look at this one and say, okay, here next is this one. And then after that is that.
Absolutely. And to be completely transparent, for us and to this day, I mean, I've been training this curriculum, I don't know, 12, 15 years. This idea about calendars, the way sort of we typically look at them like a month at a time, the box with the grid and everything, is probably one of the most controversial and most difficult practices to dislodge from our preschool classrooms. Why do you think, what on your end, why do you think that is? Why do people hold on to calendar so fiercely?
For some reason, teachers, and me included prior to this article, felt like that the children needed to know that information. But in actuality, there's not a standard in pre-K or K that says that. It does not appear until first grade.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in one of our colleagues, Elizabeth Stone, she does a great job of saying during trainings that whenever we as adults look at a calendar, we don't say today is Wednesday, May 25th, yesterday was. We just look at our calendar and we see what we've got going on for just today and what we have to prepare for. So we don't go and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 31 every month.
Ever.
So
exactly.
That's a great point, right?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, it's in terms of a tool, a learning tool. It, if you kind of analyze it, it really isn't useful in terms of young children's learning about time, about math, about seriation, about number, shape. I often see in classrooms, teachers will tell me, oh, but they're going to learn patterns from this because it's like red leaf, blue leaf, red leaf, blue leaf. But then again, as you see the way the grid is, the pattern often breaks when it comes around the corner. So because it's not a linear one, it'll go red, red, blue, and then it'll end at red again. Yeah. And so then it's like, wait, that doesn't continue the way that you're trying to teach them about pattern. So we always bring this article up because it really is, in terms of math, one of the ways that a lot of people consider as part of their math instruction. And, and again, those of you who are administrators here or even teachers, when you think about the amount of time it does take you to do the calendar, and as folks are saying, they're really not learning the things that's sort of age appropriate for them or really even helpful for them at this age. That's a lot of time that could be spent on more appropriate math instruction. So we're going to put a pin on this for a second, because then we're going to actually show you an alternative that does help kids understand about number and math with a calendar.
Yes, so put a pause on that, and let's go to Article 3 though, just for a moment, and that would have been rooms 3 and 6. What's happening in math play? What's the gist? What's the big idea there in that article?
Okay, well, we talked about that. It was talking about how in the different areas of centers that you have in your classroom and how math pops up in each one. And we talked about how actually in my classroom, in our wooden block area, the children have just recently realized, I mean, they've been playing with them all year, but they just realized that the different shapes, you can put them together and it builds bigger shapes. And they've learned that you can build the number 3 with certain shapes. And when that group of children found out, then everybody that went there wanted to do it again. So they ended up teaching each other how to put it together and work. And we found that it works that way in all of the centers, that you can use, that you use math in the dramatic play and in the, when you're doing the puzzles and those different things. And they use it all the time and they don't even realize that that's what they're learning.
I mean, and I think, research shows that to think like a mathematician, you have to be able to sort of play literally you have to be able to turn numbers upside down, and you got to think of all the equation is a game. Like when you're thinking about making equations, those are games like your mind is playing with, right? So you know, when you see, I love the idea too, that, you know, that the kids discovered, oh, look, you can make these shapes. They've been playing with them all year long, but then, you know, that's, I think, one of the big points of what you just said. They've been playing with them all year long, and suddenly somebody figures out that they can make these other shapes, or they can make letters, and they would have never gotten to that point unless they had been playing with those materials all year long. Even,
And
I'm
one
sure if
thing-
you'd shown them.
And I mean,
Go
we
ahead.
had, you know, like you just said, we have talked about how three
Mhm.
triangles can be put together to build a triangle, but it didn't click with them until they were playing and they realized it. And then it really stuck with them after that.
Absolutely, because that really is sort of a developing brain's way, a developing child's brain's way of owning the learning. They have to, you know, it's like toddlers or babies. They have to lick and put everything in their mouth and be like, ah, yes, not food, and food. Mommy, you know, stuff like that. So
Right.
that's an important piece of it.
And what does the article indicate, Shannon, and those of you who are in Shannon's group or the other group? What does the article indicate, sort of about the role of the teacher in this? In some of the sort of the scenario that you're describing with the blocks, what should the teacher perhaps be doing to
Well,
support
it
and
said
apply?
to be more of like the facilitator and kind of do the parallel play and bring out
Okay.
questions that might get their little minds to think. One of the scenarios in there was this little girl was playing in the dramatic play and had some baby dolls, and she had 4 of the 6. And the teacher said, well, you have some, I see, very good, but where are the other 2? You know, and she says, well, this one is 1 and this one is 2. Well, the little girl left, and the teacher noticed that the little girl had renamed the children. She says, well, you're 5 and you're 6. I wonder where 3 and 4 are, you know. And so the teacher is kind of giving them little questions to get their minds thinking, but not telling them anything, giving them, you know, kind of getting them started.
And I appreciate too, in that example, that the teacher is entering the play where the children are. So the naming of the babies, you know, she's sort of like, that's exactly that's how that child is thinking about them. They're not numbers, they're babies, right? And so she's going to now give them number names, and she's entering in that play and joining the child with that, which is very powerful. And I think one thing to sort of say about all of these articles, the math play, you know, the kids using different perspectives, and also the engagement piece that the calendar time talks about. At the same time, not only does this approach help with the academic learning, but also think about the social emotional learning, right? And the sort of idea of kids seeing themselves as learners, powerful learners. So yes, this, you know, play is absolutely supportive of academic learning, but also community learning and how to be a good little person, right? And then the social emotional piece, right? Because it's about sharing different ideas, allowing for the other friends to have different perspectives. Both of our structures are bigger. Yours is bigger in a different way, mine's in another way. And also, again, the relationship, when the teacher comes into the play and sort of honors the fact, this is sort of where you're learning and thinking, and I'm going to join you in that, how that must feel to a young child as a learner. So we're going to move on. And we said that, so the calendar time piece that we wanted to kind of draw out, because it is, even to this day, was just saying, like, he was in a classroom, he's like, get rid of your calendar.
I still can't dislodge it, no matter how hard I try.
So here's an option that we use in many of our classrooms here in Boston. It's also in our Setup for Success materials. It's a linear visual schedule. One thing that you'll notice about it is there are no numbers on it, because this really isn't a place to learn about sort of the numerals. There's another article that we can send along too that talks about how a calendar is a base 7 system, and all of our math is base 10. So when you're thinking about, well, how kids can learn about counting, it's not accurate from a calendar, because again, then like Marissa said, it's either, sometimes it's 28 days, 29 days, 30, 31. So it doesn't make sense to a child. And also as children think about numbers, they think about it as growing, like again, across a line, rather than the sweep of like the way calendar comes around the corner here. It's color coded. So the kids they do understand the names of the days, which are also pretty arbitrary, but it's much more compelling for them to, I mean, I still call Thursday the green day and the blue day at the end of the week. And they can really attach the meaning because it is sort of seriated that way. The way that they manage time on the calendar is by events. Yesterday and today and tomorrow is probably the most little children can kind of understand about the day. They don't understand 3 weeks from now or a month ago. So, and in the calendar on the left-hand side, that is in a special education classroom, so that the kids who really depend on a consistent schedule know when the different specialists are coming in to work with them. The calendar on the right, the pictures at the bottom are of kids, and so they know which day is theirs to do a specific job or a specific sharing piece of it. The other last piece to kind of notice about it too is that the calendar starts on Monday, because for little children, the week starts on Monday when you go to school rather than on Sunday, I guess. And so they really understand, here we go to school these days. At the end of the week, the weekend is when those are your home days. And I've definitely been in classrooms where the kids understand this system so well, they start dressing. They wear red on the red day, orange on the orange day, and things like that. And it's like very, you understand that they get it. Wait a minute, where are you wearing this blue outfit?
They're living the calendar, yes.
All right.
Fully embodying it. So two of the articles that we just looked at, the first article and the third article, were actually written by Doug Clements, who is the author of the Building Blocks Mathematics curriculum. And we are going to, yes, along with Julie Sarama, who is his wife, I believe, right? Okay, I think they are together. We're actually now going to move and watch a video of Doug Clements talking about the connection or the ways in which mathematical learning can support, as Abby was indicating just a moment ago, it can support any number of things, social, emotional piece of things, but it can also support very successfully language and literacy developments in young children. So we're going to watch about a 3-minute video here where he talks us through some of the specifics, sort of why and how that might be the case. And we'll discuss it when we are done. So let me give it a shot.
If I'm doing all this math, I don't know what's going to happen. And you better talk to them. Because if my literacy scores go, very concerned about this kind of stuff. So what we did was we gave these kids, all in both groups, control group and this building block, like letter recognition is a quick measure of that kind of literacy. And then we toured in oral language. So we did the red repository assessment real quickly. You just tell a story with these pictures, and then you ask each child to tell it back to you. That's it. And you got a bunch of measures. How many keywords did they use? What was their sentence line? What was the in other words, if you had to asking more to tell, flow. Okay? How attentive were they and how long did they take to tell a story? All we wanted was no significant difference. We weren't teaching. We just wanted to prove to the teachers that mathematics involves enough language that the kids would not suffer at all in their language. And that's what we found. Letter recognition didn't at all. Even though they spent a little less time on letter recognition, they spent a little time on geometry. That probably helped. But no significant difference on sentence length, the attention. But shockingly, delightfully, significant differences in favor of the math kids on 3 other bus scoring measures. They were significantly higher on using the key words that were identified as 35 keywords in terms of the study. They were higher on the complexity of their sentences, probably because in our math curriculum, we're always asking, tell me why. How do you know? How else could you do it? And they got to dig down to explain those kind of things. Right? And then finally, the largest effect was on independence. They were used to coming up and being expected to explain things. And so they told the story without the assessor and having to prompt them every time. So, and then oral language is very important. I'm sure you agree, but I love the story of one of our girls who just finished her first week of school. She goes home and her mother told her teacher that she comes home and tells her mother, I'm just wasting my time. I can't read, I can't write, they won't let me talk. So we don't want that. We want them talking, all right? And we think that the reason they talk so much, again, is the power of asking why. And a preschool teacher often says, you present problems and they figure out what to do. Then you ask them what process they use. I'm amazed. They learn to explain their thinking. They use this now to answer science questions and solve arguments with each other. They really do critical thinking, asking how do you know, starting in pre-K. It's very powerful. What about literacy? Large-scale research predicting school success shows that early literacy scores predict later reading, but a later reading only. Early math predicts later math and later reading. There's something fundamental about the thinking that kids do in a good early math program that helps multiple areas, right? Particularly for kids from low income and ethnic groups.
Yay, math.
So I do apologize. I do see that there were a couple of notes in the chat about the volume. I am sorry about that. But I hope that you were able to hear most of what Doug was talking about. What caught your attention there in that video? What stood out to you there?
We have our literacy coaches here having a.
Well, no, it was really hard to understand, but I did hear a little blurb and mention of the literacy and how the strong math brought out stronger literacy, but that's all I.
Yeah. So they, so the study that they did was basically what Doug was saying was they brought in building blocks, and because that was taking up a portion of the day, what they wanted to make sure or test for that it wasn't having a detrimental effect on the language and literacy development. And basically all they wanted to see was that there was no harm or no loss of that. And in fact, surprisingly to them, and great, and that they were very encouraged by and very enthusiastic about, was that in fact, implementation of building blocks not only didn't harm the language and literacy, but it actually helped boost those skills and those scores. And in fact, research shows that kids who develop good math skills is actually the better predictor of later reading ability than even some of the literacy pieces that they do in preschool. So, and I think one of the things that's really important to point out about what he was saying was it's not just that they're doing more math, but it's how the math is facilitated, right? So some people talked here about when they read in the articles, asking the questions. The kids are so used to explain your thinking. How do you know that? What are some other ways that you can do that? That even in the assessment, those children didn't need as much prompting. They were supposed to tell a story about a school bus. And so their stories that they told, they didn't need extra prompting from the assessor. And the vocabulary and the language that they used was actually very sophisticated and very much higher than what their level was, because they were so used to having this kind of discourse in the math context. So
as Doug puts it, he called it the power of asking why is what he described it as. And it's an interesting thing to note, perhaps, is that, you know, the kinds of questions that Doug is describing as being integral to the mathematics curriculum here at the building blocks, asking questions such as why or how do you know, those questions are built right into focus on pre-K in a lot of ways, right? There is some direct interplay right there. Now, if we go to just a moment here, our next
so
slide.
in Boston, the building blocks piece of it is also aligned to our standards.
Hang on. I'll get there. Keep going. That's fine.
Yeah, just advance. Yeah. So our content standards are probably similar to yours: counting and cardinality, algebraic thinking, numbers and operation, measurement and data, and geometry. So those are the content standards. So again, it's not just that kids are learning, they're learning content, but the thing to really look at that really does leverage good outcomes are adherence to the practice standards, which are over there on the right, which we're going to get to in just a
They're
second.
coming. Just bear with me here. It's all right.
Which is
It's
again
coming back.
making sense of the problems, modeling with mathematics, using appropriate tools strategically, and also expressing themselves around their thinking. So yeah. Yeah, and so if you look at the practice standards, which I'm sure you also have in addition to your content standards, you'll notice that those are very similar to the instructional practices of focus as well. Kind of all umbrellas underneath that there too. So in other words, if you're doing the good instructional practices of focus, you're also attending to the practice standards of a content area. And these are also similar practice standards that you would see in the science and engineering standards as well. Okay, so let's get into actually building blocks itself. So we're going to take a look at how the weeks are laid out. There are 30 weeks of instruction of building blocks. So we're just going to take a look here for a quick second. So what is something folks notice about this, about how the weeks are laid out?
We spend a lot more time working on number sense than we do, say, measurement and patterns.
Okay.
If you can also see there the asterisks at the bottom, it's not that you don't address those in those.
They're just tied together.
Yep. But that's the one that's sort of most focused on for that week. Yep.
You don't cover one type of math before moving to the next, like cover it fully. You're hopping around.
Yep. And yeah, and it spirals. So you'll do the first 3 weeks on number sense, the next 2 on geometry, you'll circle back to number sense and go back and forth. And again, that's because that's following the progression of the way kids learn, right? They don't learn like, okay, for the next 4 weeks, I'm gonna understand everything about number. It's like they learn something about that, they have some other experiences, they circle back, something new will be added to what they understand there. And it's like, oh, and they can also add to things that they've learned in geometry that helps them learn about number. Because when they're learning about geometry, they'll be counting sides, they'll be counting angles, and then it's like, oh, so now I know about that. When we circle back to number sense, I'm going to have a little bit more information about that, and vice versa. So it really does. So building blocks really does follow this sort of spiraling approach. And it's also based on math trajectories, which we're going to also take a look at in just a second as well. So we're going to take a look at actually one of the building blocks teacher guides, so that folks can kind of get a little bit used to what it looks like. So there's a separate, you'll be using a separate teacher's guide than the focus curriculum. And The building blocks math is listed in the focus schedule of the week, but the teacher's guide will give you more information, more details about the math piece of it. Okay, so we wanted you to get familiar with how to navigate through the weeks itself. So
yeah, so what you're going to do is you're going to go on a scavenger hunt, and you are going to be looking for the points that are bulleted over here on the slide. So in each week that your group has, you're going to take note of what the trajectories and the objective of the week is. You're going to be looking for the section that describes the math throughout the year opportunities. There is going to be a box in each of the weeks providing some literature connections. I'll take note of what the whole group lessons are for that week, the small group lessons, and then any information that you can find around differentiating for the range of learners that are in the classroom in front of you. So you have the slideshows. You have the slideshow in front of you. We will split up into 6 groups here, and as it says over on the left, groups 1 and 2. If you click right on that link where it says groups 1 and 2, that will take you to a PDF of week 3. And you will try to find these 6 bullet points. Groups 3 and 4, you'll be working on week 13. And groups 5 and 6, you'll be working on week 25. We're going to give you about, let's see, what are we going to give you? We're going to give you about, how much time? You've got numbers here that I can't totally understand.
Well, how about we come back around 3:05, so that also builds in a little break time for you as well. A 5-minute break.
Okay, sure. So yeah, so maybe do about 10 or 15 minutes of work in your groups, then take about a 5-minute break. Join us back at 3:05, and we will discuss.
3:05 is their
3:05 our time. 3:05 your time. There
Sorry.
it
All
is.
right, come back at 3:05. See you later.
Do not take an hour-long break.
Sorry.
Yes.
I am tired. So 2:05 their time.
Thank you.
Shoo.
All right, and we will be here. If you run into trouble with the breakout rooms, as some of us encountered a short while ago, what I guess we would recommend is simply on your own clicking into one of these links and looking through the week and seeing what you can find. We will be able to discuss as a whole group when we come back. But let me try to send you to your rooms now. All right. So I think we might all be back. Hopefully. Hello, everybody. Hope you got a chance to sort of get your circulation going a little bit there, maybe for a few minutes. So the teacher's guide for building blocks. Let's just talk a little bit for a few quick minutes here about what people found, what people noticed as they were going through. And let's just start with week 3, the first group, groups 1 and 2, and just talk to us real quickly. Give us a taste of what should we start with, maybe?
No, just sort of tell us like what are the things that are happening in this week for week 3. And you can talk about any of these pieces that you found.
What are they learning about in week 3 of building blocks?
How children learn to count.
It's a counting week. Yep.
Okay.
And how are they doing it this week? What are some of the whole group, small group activities that they're doing?
They're using pizza and the different pepperoni toppings on it.
Oh, the pizza game. Yes.
Any math throughout the year or literature connections? Did y'all find where those were in the week?
Yes, I found the counting one, and I thought that was funny or interesting because in years past, I have been doing that every single day because we have to, put on how many you have in your class today, how many are enrolled, how many are here, how many present. And I've gotten away from it and I went, oh, there it is again. So let's get back to what we've been doing.
There you go. So you were already on the right track.
Absolutely. Well,
Mhm.
again, that's no surprise because again, that's about playing, right? And that's engagement and hands-on material. So of course it, I don't know what made it so you took it away, but it definitely lines up with, again, those practice standards and content standards. Anybody find the place in the week where you see literature connections?
Yes, you've got the very hungry caterpillar.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
So there's a corner on, I can't remember which page it is, but there's a corner that has suggested literacy or other like storybooks that have to do with that.
It's on page
Yes,
35.
Okay.
Right. And those books, unfortunately, perhaps are not actually included with the curriculum, but as Abby indicated, suggestions and possibilities.
But I'm sure those are very much books that you recognize and you might already have in your classroom, right? So, more of those that you can have in here for building blocks as well.
I hope everybody in Starkville is okay and staying safe with your thunderstorms. I'm sorry to hear that, but yeah, take it easy. All right.
Did anyone find any suggestions or any places that talked about differentiation for counting? Since this is a counting week.
We saw that there were some differentiating for the small group activity for the small group activity and actually for the math game, the math hands-on game center. And then there was a whole page that had, if they don't have this, do this. If they don't have this, they do this. It was really awesome. There's so many different ways that you can differentiate.
Absolutely.
Right. And that differentiation, kind of maps in some ways to the trajectories. Were you guys able to locate the trajectories in the week there? Yeah, I can see Shannon's nodding, right? Okay, we're gonna take some of the trajectories apart in a little bit more detail in just a minute or two.
Yeah, but as I'm sure you saw when under the part about teaching for understanding and how children learn, part of what it tells you is that children are they can be on a whole range of where they are with counting, right? And so that is the idea of the trajectory that it follows, is that this is about counting. You may have some children that might be spot on, might be beyond this trajectory. Actually, the trajectories, which we'll look at in a second, go from the age 2 to age 9, because your basic, 4-year-old could be anywhere on that range. Okay, so groups 3 and 4, y'all looked at week 13. Anything similar, anything different that you saw in your week? What was your week about?
Okay, I'm having trouble unmuting for some reason. So there's counting and ordering numbers and actually patterning by adding 1. What would that next number be? So of course, week 13 a little further in than week 3 is. So we're building on those skills.
And did you find similar, again, pieces, literature connection, whole group, small group, differentiation ideas in yours?
Yes, definitely. And I liked how that was on every day, especially with the differentiation. And then that last page where it gave you activities for if then in multiple scenarios.
For sure.
And I liked how it called the small group time. It said work time, but it was divided up into small group and then the center time, which is basically what we all do usually, but I liked that was work time.
And and you can certainly be flexible and kind of something that's during the work time you could have as your center time. If you're feeling like, okay, maybe I'll move that to center time, or you're seeing one of the center time activities is something that needs a little more teaching up to, you can move it to a small group where you could be more targeted.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the scheduling piece, we play it a couple of different ways in the classrooms up here. With the math center time, with the building block center time, teachers will sometimes have sort of a standalone building blocks center time in their schedule of the day. Sometimes what they'll do though is they'll integrate those building block centers into the larger focus on pre-K centers for sort of an efficiency, sort of a time saving, mechanism right there. So.
But if you definitely have the luxury of time so that you could have a whole separate math center time, that's certainly
the preferred.
Yeah, that's, but we often find that we don't have as long of a day to be able to do that. But yeah, that if you talk to Doug, he would definitely be like, yeah, you got to find a whole other math center time. One thing, let's actually move on to week 25, groups 5 and 6. Anything similar or different that you found in your group, in your week 25, towards the end, almost the end of the curriculum?
Yes, and that in our lesson we're subtracting and adding. I like that, and also we're also adding sums of 5s. So that's a little of division in there.
So we're going from just counting, to the adding 1. Go ahead.
And I'm sorry. It's like I'm slow or you're too fast. Go ahead.
No, keep going. So what else are you doing in this week 25?
And I also like that you're counting to and backwards as well. So the children, you know how we are so repetition on having children to learn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and not knowing, if you count backwards 10, 9, 8. So I like that too. And just adding in groups of 5s or taking out or having the children to identify, the larger group than a smaller group. I like that too.
So another counting week, but as you can see, and as you'll be able to look at in the teacher's guide, they're all weeks that are about counting. As they go along, they get a little bit more complicated. They build onto the earlier counting weeks. And one thing that some people might think is okay, you're week 25, you're just working with the number 5. But again, part of it is that you're not just, wouldn't you be working at number 100 at this point? But building blocks is more about the idea that you really want to get good at all the different ways that you constitute and deconstitute 5. And that if the kids can get solid in that, that's going to be much more hardy than saying, okay, can you all count to 100? Because that's a much more, and you can see all the different ways, counting by 2s, counting backwards, counting up, plus adding 1 more. Again, the language of that is different than just saying 6 is 1 more than 5. It's getting them to think about those things in those complicated ways. Did people, I wanted to just take a moment, did people notice what some of the whole group activities were for their week? Anybody? 3, 13, 25, what they're doing when they're sitting all together. People describe centers and small groups, but what are they doing all together?
On week 25 in whole group, one of the activities, they had to crunch down and then count to 10 taller and then go backwards and crunch back down.
Blast off, I think it's called, where they go up like a little rocket and they come back down.
I know there
Week
were
13.
also some finger hand play and problems and dealing with length, I think too, on whole.
Okay. Yeah, so one thing to kind of point out with the structure of building blocks, yes, you have those centers and small groups where you're doing targeted instruction, but there is a whole group time where everybody's together working on a math skill. And that's really important because, again, that piece, Doug would say that children really need a very intentional time that's getting them to focus very much on a math concept. I mean, yes, the majority of what they're doing is centers and exploration and play, but then there's also a time when you have to be very explicit about, so for example, when you're looking at triangles, letting everybody know that, you know, this is a side, this is an angle, this is the base, this is the apex. So they all have the shared language and the shared understanding. And you'll notice, just like in focus, that whole group time is fairly short, like maybe 5 minutes. A lot of times, like people said, it's songs, it's finger plays, so that everybody has, it's still fun and engaging. But that's an important piece too. I was looking here in the chat, it says that the math throughout the year, great transition activities, absolutely. For example, the teacher says a number during cleanup and the children put away that many items. Great, yes. That's also a quick way to see if like kids understand that whole like one-to-one correspondence, right? And it also, again, what's great about that too is that not only builds the math skill, but also the independence, the social emotional piece of it, the community building at the same time. Mm-hmm. Great. So if I do see some math teachers guides in people's hands there, and you'll see that every week follows that same kind of format where there's a big, definitely I would read the Teach for Understanding to kind of ground yourself on what's happening in that week, the big ideas. And I really like it the way at the end of every week, there's a what's ahead kind of thing. So you can kind of think about like, okay, well, maybe you do have kids that are kind of beyond this week. So you kind of know where you're heading towards. Okay, so we've been talking trajectory. Lala, say it 15 times fast.
Try that, yeah.
So we're going to actually take a look at what these trajectories are. Now, so building blocks is framed by these learning trajectories. And when they did research to design the curriculum, they did something like, I don't know, 25,000 children, studied 25,000 children, and that's how they formed these trajectories. So is this true? So it's a pretty good idea of what might be sort of typical of a typically developing 3-4-year-old. But you'll see in the trajectories, it goes from chronologically age 2 to 9, but developmentally, a kid could be chronologically age 6 and be at a 3-year-old trajectory, or vice versa. So it's just to kind of ground us on like, what is a typical progression through math understanding. So what we're going to ask folks to do first is we're going to be actually looking at the geometry trajectory.
Not the entire trajectory,
just
but
some piece of it.
You know,
just to give you an idea.
seven points along the way in that trajectory. Right. We're gonna give you just a couple of minutes in the slideshow that you have. You'll click right here on the screen where it says trajectory game, and it will take you to a sheet where you'll have descriptions of the 7 trajectory points, as Abby said. Take a couple of minutes to review those, look over those, and then we're going to show you some examples of some children's work and some words and language children have used to describe their work. And we're going to ask you to think about, okay, so which one of these trajectory points that we've just been looking at for geometry does this example pertain to, etc. So
don't get anxious about that yet. Let's just take a look at the trajectories.
Let's just take a look at the trajectories, and then we'll go from there. So
give everybody about 3 minutes to read them over.
3 minutes is fine. Yes.
All right, let's bring on people.
So before we jump into the game that I was so excited, I was telling you about, does anybody have any sort of thoughts or any considerations about the trajectories that we've been looking at for the past couple of minutes? Anything stand out for anybody here on these?
I bet everyone's like, oh my gosh, what detail these are. Who's ever heard of these things like this?
There is an amazing level of detail.
You know,
yes.
Doug, you would know. He's very detailed, but yes.
Marissa wants to. I'm sorry. Marissa wants to know where you found this. Where'd you find this?
So these are at the back of the teacher's guide. So it's an appendix, I believe, at the back of the teacher's guide. You will find the trajectories for the number sense, the geometry, the patterns, the measurement pieces of things.
Much more. This is only 7 of them, but in the back there's and even we only gave you 7 because if you look at the actual trajectories, they're very, very detailed. And universally, when people look at this, they're like, what? So that's why we're going to play a little game to be like, all right, this sounds, I'm sure this makes a lot of sense, but what does this look like in a classroom? And
Yeah,
like,
we're gonna put it into action, because this is, this is gonna be.
It's not going to be any good unless we can apply it.
Right, and this is going to be a piece of the work. You're going to want to be observing your children in small groups and in the other the components, and you're going to want to be thinking about, well, where do they fall on these trajectories? So we're going to give you a taste of that right now. So if you're able to keep this sheet open in a tab or in a window as we go through this, that's great. That's fine. It might be a helpful thing, but let me click back to our slideshow here, and let's show you the first picture.
Ooh. Okay.
And you've got the work, and you've got the words from the child as well here.
It's a little blurry, but you can kind of see. Okay. So the child says, these match, they're the same shape. They're the same shape. Which trajectory number is that? Would you say?
I would think number 3.
Yes. Okay. What is it, friends?
Somebody might be in the chat.
Number 3.
Oh, number 3.
What is that? Can you read out the actual name? Number 3 is what?
And then read
shape what? What does it say?
Orientation.
Shape match your orientation.
Ding, 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 ding. Yes.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. So it means that the child can match basic shapes with different orientations. And you can tell that because you turned the triangle and the square on its axis there.
Rotated them, yes.
Rotated them, yes.
Right, okay.
Yay, good.
We were off to a flying start. Let's go to this one right here.
These are triangles. Isosceles. Who is that? Which number is it?
Boy, people are taking cover from tornadoes right now.
I know.
Wow, guys.
Number 4.
Say it out. What's it called?
Number 4 is what? Give us the whole name of the trajectory, please.
Okay, shape recognizer. Typical, a sign of development is when a child can recognize the name of prototypical circle, square, and less often a typical triangle. Some children may name different sizes, shapes, and orientations of rectangles, but also accept some shapes that look rectangular but are not rectangular.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me ask. Say that again.
I was thinking 5. The
Okay,
shape
tell us
matcher,
what 5.
sizes and orientation.
5 is what again? It's shape what?
Shape matcher, sizes and orientation.
Sizes and orientation. Okay, all right. So we got two contenders in the race right now. Anybody want to throw another horse in the ring?
I was just thinking the first one was correct because size and orientation, like while these are they could be turned different ways, they're actually 3 different types of triangles.
Okay. All right. So you're going with, what was that? Shape matcher orientation? Like the first yes? Okay.
No, I was
All
going
right.
with the lady who said the typical one. Shape recognizer typical.
Shape recognizer typical. My mistake. Thank you.
I
You're
was
right.
just-
Yes.
Yeah, I was just disagreeing with number 5.
Okay. Gotcha. Great.
What's the answer?
6.
Oh, go ahead. Uh-oh. We got another one?
Say that one more time. Sorry, we missed it.
6. Shape recognizer, circles, squares, and triangles. This sign of
Talk to us
development.
about.
This
Yeah,
sign
talk
of
to us about why
development-
you.
Okay, well, these are non-prototypical triangles. They're all different. but they're all triangles. They're orientated differently. You see some isosceles triangles. You see a regular triangle. Look like it may possibly be a scalene triangle over there. So they are able to recognize they're just not prototypical. They're not what we
All
would
right,
consider
somebody.
a typical triangle.
That's great. You have got the triangle knowledge right there, which is awesome. And you're actually completely correct. You are totally right. You get the gold star on that one because
Right.
yes.
F is shape recognizer, circles, squares, and triangles.
Yes, our non prototypical triangles right there.
But
So
I can totally see some of the other answers as well, right?
right, and
That's
so
why these
that
trajectories are a little on the tricky
you know that just points to sort of like the level of precision at which these trajectories are written. You know they're quite specific and quite precise. Where are we right here?
I made a triangle out of these craft sticks. Somebody did this. Which trajectories?
I was gonna say number 7 because it says, for example, when asked to make a triangle with sticks, the child may create the following, and it's a triangle.
You are absolutely correct. Yes, that's exactly what's going on right
Yes.
there.
They are constructing the shapes from parts.
What about here? They match, they're the same shape with our triangles, squares, and circles.
Number 2.
Yes, say it out.
Shape matcher sizes.
Yes.
They match basic shapes with different sizes. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yay.
How about this one?
These match, they're the same shape. These match, they're the same shape. Again, similar shapes, different orientations. What do we got?
I think it's number 5.
Number 5, shape matcher sizes and orientation. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Different sizes and different orientations right here.
Hey.
And closing in here.
These are rectangles. Even a square.
It's my favorite kind of rectangle.
Oh, he's so square. Okay. Who's this?
What do we think we're looking at right here?
Different sizes. Sizes and orientation.
I think it's 4 because it says they may recognize that some are rectangles even though they're not rectangles.
Not prototypical. Right.
Okay. Right. So we've got shape matcher sizes, shape recognizer typical. The correct answer, drum roll please, is shape recognizer typical is what we're looking at here. Prototypical rectangles of different sizes, shapes, and orientations.
Yeah,
right
I think
here.
the thing that tips it over for that is that they accept some shapes that look rectangular but are not rectangles.
No, these are all rectangles though. In this instance, these are all rectangles.
Right, but that would also be another clue as to what else that they would throw in there.
They could, yes. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, so, oh, is there one more?
And we do have one more.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Do we? Is this one?
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
Sorry.
Yep. Let's see. Process of elimination probably at this point leaves us with the right answer. Where do we think we're at with this one?
Shape match identity.
Exactly. Thank you for that. Yes, that's exactly right.
And that's the earliest sign of understanding shape when they can match it one for one, right? Circle, circle, square, square, and using the words match, right? So these were just seven different levels of the geometry trajectory, and believe me, there are many more. And again, this isn't to necessarily, no one needs to memorize. I've been doing this, I don't know, a million years, and I still don't remember all of these.
Wait. No, that's how they get out of the PD at the end of the end
There
of
will
the
be a test at
afternoon.
the end, that's
Yeah,
right.
hold on.
But no, the idea here is that at least what you're kind of doing is that you can look at children's work and say, maybe you, part of your documentation and assessment, you take these pictures or you take notes, so that then you can go and look at the trajectories. Again, they're right there in the back of the book. And it's not even so much that is it so important that are they at level 2 or 3, but just so that you can kind of see generally where they are. Because again, that little part at the end of each unit where it talks about what's next, or again, here's how children learn and sort of the differentiation pieces, that helps you match out why would I use this or when would I use this differentiation and for whom.
Yes.
So you kind of like marry up your documentation so you take your documentation from week 3, look at kids' work, put them somewhere on the trajectory, so that then when you get over there to week 13, you have a better idea as to what the Teach for Understanding is probably more relevant to your little friends.
It helps you develop appropriate next steps to keep moving things forward. We're actually going to take a look in a few minutes at a form that we use that supports some of this. But before we do that, we're going to diverge a little bit here. I'm going to take a brief detour and look at a few more videos.
Yeah. So looking at children's work helps you see where kids are on the trajectories. And here we're going to give you a couple of quick peeks into activities that kind of help move kids along into our on those trajectories. So, and again, the idea that math is everywhere and it's throughout all the components, even in some of the ones that are the literacy ones. So let's take a look at the intro to centers. Coming along.
It's coming. There we go. And I will try to make sure that the volume is all the way up.
Pretty quick. So she's using that as a way to gather them together to get ready for intro to centers. The next piece, we're going to look at, I love it how someone had talked about this at the beginning of the PD about using non-standard units of measurement. And let's take a look at this called As Long as My Arm.
I think the stool is shorter.
Okay, so so that's some pieces of building blocks inside the classroom. Let's see how we can use building blocks outside the classroom.
This game is called I Spy. You will be looking for different shapes around your neighborhood or inside your home. You will be finding 4 different shapes. You will be finding a triangle, a rectangle, a square, and a circle. So inside my house, I was able to find some of the same shapes. Actually, right above me, let's see my light. It is an example of a circle. A circle is a continuous curved line. Above right here is my vent. That's an example of a square. It has 4 equal sides. Right here, I have a box of gloves, an example of a rectangle. As you can see on the rectangle, the 2 opposite sides are the same. The top and the bottom are the same, and the 2 sides are the same. An example of another square would be my box of my mask. Right here is 4 equal sides, 4 corners. See, I also have a candle. The top of the candle, bottom of the candle, circle. There's plenty of shapes all over your house. I'm sure if you and your family decide to make some type of checklist or some type of diagram and maybe take a picture and paste it in the chart, and you guys can go over how many different objects that you found that represent those different shapes. That could be a great way for you guys to spend some time together. I hope you guys enjoyed this little activity. I hope you guys can try it at home. And you guys, please stay safe. Please stay healthy. And we'll see you later.
And on the playground. Awesome. And let's take a look at a couple of more, a small group and a whole group activity. Oh, I think this might be the same. Oh, that was the same one as the entrance centers. Okay. Pause and our pattern video.
We'll just play all the way through. So, a number of different examples right there of large group, small group, indoors, outdoors, gross motor, fine motor types of situations with the mathematics.
So when you're looking at your teacher's guides and you're seeing the activities that are described in there, these are just some of the different ways that teachers were able to do it. Actually, many of the videos were when we did it in the remote. But as you can see here, the flexibility around where you want to do it, how you want to do it, how you want to present it to kids is completely up to you and how it's most relevant to your little friends. But I think some of the things that's important here to, again, resonate back to what we were saying about what do we want math to look, sound, and feel like. Engaging, hands-on, using multiple modalities, different perspectives, and also kids being able to talk about how they know things, show in different ways how they understand the different concepts. Any questions here before we move on? Fun way to do shapes. Yep, absolutely. You could probably do that also in one of the focus units is shadows and reflections. You could probably make shadows in different shapes. See if the shadows create the same shapes.
And so the idea of children showing or demonstrating what they know in a number of different ways or through utilizing different modalities is sort of going back, thinking about our trajectories again and, helping us to get a better read of sort of where children are developmentally in their understanding of the mathematical concepts. We're going to take a quick look here at a young man, a English language learner in one of our classrooms up here at Boston. And as we take a look at this video, it's quite short, a minute or less. Think about three things. Think about what does this child know? How do you know that that is what he knows? And what would you do next to keep moving this child forward? So what does this young boy understand about the mathematics here in this clip?
It looks like he knows different ways to make 4.
How do we know that?
How do I know that? Well, so I saw him moving 2 of them around. Now I couldn't really hear what he was saying, so I'm going out on a limb here. But he kept moving the counters in different places. And I just saw him smiling. So that's really all I'm going on.
And they're not dinosaurs, they're cows.
I know, isn't that great?
Yeah, and he kept saying quattro, and he not only showed us with when he's moving around the cows, but he was also showing us with his fingers, right? And he split it up across two of his hands, and again, one of the things that I really appreciate that he points out, he seemed really happy, a big smile on his face, like, yep, I move them all around all these different ways, it's still going to be quattro, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
And if that is the case, what might be something that we would do next to continue moving him along here?
It's pretty solid with 4 with quattro.
Move it up to 5.
I was going to say the same thing. Add some more counters.
That could certainly be something to think about. Another thing to maybe think about is we saw him here sort of working with, 2 and 2, being the 4, the 4-ness, maybe perhaps thinking about sort of other combinations to get to 4, 1 and, you've got 1 and 3, or, could be another opportunity.
He seems to be pretty solid with sorting them. I mean, I guess one thing I would wonder is he sorting them because they're 2 yellow and 2 red? Or does he, like, if I wanted to know, does he really understand that it's 2 and 2, like as Dave's saying, the 4-ness of it? What if I gave him if all the cows were different colors, or if they were all the same colors, or different, or even different shapes? Because that's the other thing. I think that they're all the same. Or maybe is he thinking of them? Is he pairing them? Because actually, this is happening during the wind and water unit, where they're studying about baby animals and parent animals. And is he just grouping them according to mother and baby? So it's like, so these are all kinds of things I might be adding some different variables to make sure that he's solid with 4. Maybe even before I would add 1 more or take 1 away, right? To see like that. I would really want to, those are ways you could find out even more concretely that he understands the 4 piece of it. But again, this was like 1 minute of watching this child. You could be taking quick notes on, so we have documentation sheets that are in the curriculum. You could make that have the trajectory that goes along with it. So the way this trajectory is, again, you don't necessarily have to know what 1, 3, 4, or 4 or 5 is, but you could probably think this child is probably around a 4 or 5. Double check it when you go back. Writing down your comments and reflections, everything that we just sort of said. What might be next? Does he understand? Is it by color? Is he thinking that they're just mother and child? And again, these are things for you to take quick little notes for and to reflect on, sort of like maybe knowing that in another 2 weeks, you're going to come back to the numeracy trajectory.
And
so
we have these sheets on our website, these building block small group record sheets, and the sheets on our website actually do include down at the bottom the descriptions of the relevant trajectories, similar to what we were using in our trajectory game. So there's a little bit more detail on the sheets that are on our website that will help you here.
But again, this is sort of. No, go ahead, Marissa.
I'm sorry, I can't see you, Abby, or for whatever. I can't tell when you're talking or not. So I wanted to mention to everyone on here that this is why we were not asking people to purchase the assessment guide, is because we're going to be using these.
Yeah, the assessment guide that Building Blocks has. So there's 2 books that we sort of gave as recommended or optional. One, there's a book on assessment, which are basically these sheets, and another one called resources, teacher resources. And again, lesson learned from our end. they're really kind of formatted in a way that our teachers felt like they were just like way too small scale. So we've made materials that are probably more user friendly in the classroom like this, that are available on the website. So you don't need to purchase the extra book. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things just sort of to take away before we move on to the next section is that, so this is how the trajectories sort of live and operate in a classroom. So when you look at them in the back of the book, do not get intimidated by it at all, but it's just sort of to let you know that this is how this math looks and feels like, and is sort of based again on those trajectories of progression. We're going to hear really quickly from a teacher to hear how she uses those small group record sheets.
Yes. Hi. I'll be edited out. Okay, so I'm going to ask you 3 questions about the small group, building block small group that we just saw. First, how do you determine your small groups?
So usually they're children I think will work well together. That's the biggest factor. I think honestly, like it's always like a heterogeneous grouping, like and you know, sometimes I might pull a kid by themselves if I think that's what needs to happen. But yeah.
How do you use documentation or assessment to determine your small groups or your next bit of instruction?
So I actually really liked the small group records that you guys came up with for the curriculum. Yeah, I mean, I had to like change the fonts and stuff, but in general, like I really, really like them because it gives a lot of space to kind of write and you know, kind of makes them, it has boxes where you can talk about like who's kind of struggling, what are some possible enhancements you might do, what are some next steps. So I think that helps me to be a little more intentional, even if I don't necessarily like next week, you know, look at it. It's like the act of writing it down, I think is like so like powerful. I also take pictures to share with the children about what they've been working on so that they can remember, so they can share with each other of what their process was, because they'll listen to their friends, you know, a little bit more critically than they do to me.
How do you use your paraprofessional or your assistant teacher with instruction?
With what?
With instruction.
With instruction. So actually, for the building blocks math circles, my assistant teacher, she usually does those. And so she has like a good sense kind of what's going on because she has to be prepared to do the circle. So we'll collaborate. You know, I may suggest a book that she might want to read instead of you know, something else, like some like ways to supplement it. And so then I just kind of let her do what she wants to do. She kind of will like filter around and see what's going on. And if something seems kind of interesting, like she may say, I may ask her to go somewhere that like I really want, like the kids might need help. Or that I really want them to work on.
Do you get a chance to plan with her?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Baldwin. So we have like a million hours on Wednesday to sit and plan, and we look through like the textbook and talk about, sometimes we have like a 4-week cycle and we'll look through like the next couple weeks and talk about like what the themes kind of are and what the expectations might be, because like sometimes.
So lucky Kendra with 1 million hours of planning time on Wednesdays.
So when she was talking about thinking about using
Sorry.
the small group record sheets and to think about how she's going to constitute her small groups. Here's another example. So when we were talking about the resource guides or the resources that Building Blocks created, these are about half the size in the book. So what we did is we blew them up sort of 3 times the size and made them like this. So these are also available on the website that we felt like were more teacher friendly. So for example, here, and here's where the differentiation you can see even in the materials. So we color coded the simpler. So for this activity, the kids are going to be duplicating a pattern. So this child is obviously on the highest level of the pattern trajectory because his is the green yellow sheet. The mid level is the purple and the blue is the lower ones, the lower trajectory. So not only, and you can see that the little friend that's next to him sort of in that corner there is on the mid level. And he's being asked not just to duplicate the pattern on the card, but beyond the card as well. So you can see here that the teacher would have, that's how she would use the documentation and assessment to be able to say, okay, this is how I'm going to differentiate and target my small groups. Okay, so
got a question here from Mrs. Ford about accessing some of these things, you know, so that you can start preparing, etc. They should be on our website, Abby, I think.
Yep.
And we can, I mean, our website is, you know, the bpsearlylearning.org.
And then also the resources we can also share after this. We have some of the make and take materials like this that we do broken up by unit. So if there's something that, so like this is something you can definitely prep over the summer, cut things out, color code them, put them in Ziploc baggies that we always do. And that may or may not be on the website. We'll make sure to send those to you as broken up over the units. Okay, so we're going to move along a little quickly. So one other, how long was the snapshots one? The number talk?
I don't remember.
Okay, so another whole group example of a whole group activity in Building Blocks is something called snapshots, where the kids are asked to show their understanding of number. And we are going to take a look at actually this teacher doing something called number talks, which is similar. These are actually kindergarten age children, but snapshots is based on operates in the same or similar fashion. So we're going to watch a few minutes of this.
TJ, what did you see? Five. What did you see, Jen? Five. What about you, Alex? Five. Somebody see it another way? Alex, how did you see five? If you add more dollars. Right. Right. Christian? If you add the bottom. Oh, if all the bottom was filled in, it would be 10. How'd you know, TJ, it was just five? He said five also. How did you know it's five? Okay, what about the top? They're all filled in. If the top is all filled in, five. Sounds like nobody has a count.
Because 5 plus 5 equals 10, but if you minus 5 from 10, you get 5.
Okay, because it was just 5, right? Okay. All right. Ready for another one? Jesselyn, what did you see? 7. 7. What did you see, Arjun? 7. 7. 7. 7. 7. 7. 7. Tell me how you saw 7. Right.
Because the top was filled in and 2 more would make 7.
How did you think about that? The top was filled in.
And 2 more would make 7.
So you knew that was how many? 5. And
2 more make 7.
Did you say 5 and 2 is 7, or did you say 5, 6, 7?
No, 5 and 2.
Do you think of it a different way?
If it's a 10 frame, then if you add 1 more, it would be 8, and if you add 2 more, it would be 10. If you took 3 away, it would be 7. It would be 7.
So you thought 3 were missing and you didn't? Okay, so that's number talks with a 10 frame. In preschool, kids are going to be working with 5. So the way snapshots looks, so I'm going to actually show you. This is another material that we make in Make and Take this way. So this is our snapshot camera, manila folder with our coffee thing. So let me just take the card. So we say, take a picture with your mind. Show it to the kids all the way around. And just like she did, what number did you see in the camera? Take a picture with your brain. And so they'll say 4, 4, 4. Okay, let's check. And then just as she did with the 10 frames, the child will come up and explain all the different ways. How did you know it was 4, right? Some kids will say, I saw 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, or I just know that's 4 because it looks like the way the dice looks. So again, what you can do then too is, okay, take another picture with your brain. What did you see? And so they did say, they'll probably say 4 again, but again, you'll show them 4, but with a different orientation. There's 2 blue, 2 green. And again, see if, again, do they see it as 4 altogether? Do they see all the different ways? How did you know it was 4? So this is a whole group that kids would do. And again, part of what they're doing in this is taking apart the number in all different ways, but also what's really important too is that they're hearing the different ways that their peers are also doing it. So not only, again, when we think about what does it sound like, it doesn't sound the same to me as it might to you. And that different strategy that one child might have had, oh, I just saw it in my, it looks like dice, or I know it looks like a house that has 4 corners. I see a square. I know a square has 4 corners. I've heard kids do a million different strategies. And that's just as important as knowing we saw 4, right? So that's a piece of, that's something that you would be doing in the whole group with kids. And also at a small group, kids love to play this with each other as well. Of course, I always have to explain to them that that's a camera these days. They're like, wait, how come you don't slide it? I'm like,
Yeah,
right.
where's the iPhone?
But you could probably make a box or something like that. So we're gonna go through a couple of other quick things. Again, so you can see all the different ways that math is not just the 10 minutes of whole group. We talked a little bit earlier about building block centers. So as we said, if you have the luxury of time to have a whole separate building blocks center time, it's basically like your center time that you might run in the morning. There'll be activities, as you saw in the teacher's guide, where children have choices to move around from different areas. There can be like shape games over here on the left, which also in the Make and Take materials, we have the templates for that for you to make. Feely boxes, and that's like a small group, or kids can be doing individually. Another great Make and Take yes, Mathematizing, that friends can be, I think it's great when teachers can make it Make and Takes, but also it's really great for kids to be making too for the classroom. The other piece that we're gonna talk about too is even if you don't have a separate math time, if we had a little bit longer of the day, we would have you go off into breakout rooms to take some of our literacy centers and mathematize them. So, but we're only going to do one right now and just kind of popcorn it out. And so these are other centers that are happening during the day that aren't necessarily math centers or STEM or STEAM centers. So we're actually going to talk about animal research in the Library and Listening Center. They're going to be looking at nonfiction books to write books about animals themselves. Very heavy literacy, writing, drawing. What are some ideas for mathematizing that center? What kind of questions can you ask kids? What kinds of facilitation might you do to add a little more math to this center? We'll take a few. You can pop them in the chat box, or you can say them out loud.
Can you click on one of those activities and make it bigger so we can read it? Because
Yes, yes.
thank you.
You can look at it here. You could also click in on this on the copy of the slideshow that you have yourselves.
So if I remember correctly, there is a math component of comparing and contrasting, and it also coincides with your literacy. So you're talking a lot about what is similar and different, and that automatically ties in with your math.
Sure. Writing a book, you could ask them to write the page numbers on their book so that you can see if one can put them into order. Again, I'm thinking about that little friend that we just saw with the 4 and the quattro. Maybe if he acted out the story first before he drew the picture in his book, could also be part of it, because then you can kind of say what happened first, what happened second, what happened third. What if one more cow came over and graphing? Yep. So if they're researching, you can, depending on what nonfiction books they're looking at, you can find out, things like how much do cows weigh, how much do they eat, in the book, how many are brown, how many are black, how many are different kind of colors. So yeah, so even this heavy literacy activity has lots of opportunities to, as we call it, mathematize, right? 3D representation of an animal, absolutely. Yep. How many do you see? Absolutely. Yep. So number, geometry, again, looking in the book, depending on what nonfiction book you're looking at, you can be looking at, what shape are his ears? What are what tail? What kind of habitat do they live in?
Even the patterning piece potentially with the different animal coverings and the different colorings that animals have is possible opportunity right here.
Great.
And so this is this mathematizing piece that we're talking about right here is a muscle in some ways. That's a way of thinking about this. It's a muscle that we encourage teachers to exercise early and often. And the more that you engage sort of in this game that we've just very briefly run through of looking at a ostensibly language and literacy lesson and sort of spinning out the possible mathematical opportunities, the more facile you will get at that, and be able to then sort of bring those out, highlight those, and integrate them into the activities that the children are engaging in.
Yeah, I think some folks talked. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's just a bad delay between here and Boston. But I was going to, if you can scroll back up to those standards in that top right-hand corner, I thought this would be a good time to mention how everybody saw something different in the math. And when our team here in Mississippi put this together, we did provide some math standards, but we had to limit it to 2. And we're going to make a disclaimer in our training to make sure that it doesn't have to be exactly what's on there, the standard. So you heard it from Boston also that it can be a pattern, if your child in the classroom needs to work on a pattern just because it's not listed as a standard in that box, I want to be sure that everyone hears that.
Yes, that's a great message I love that you said that, because I think it's important to, again, all that documentation and assessment and what you see kids doing will drive to where what your facilitation is and what standards you'll be addressing. Your kids are so into measuring, right? You know, you could be going, all right, well, let's like the little girl who made something as long as their arm. Here's a piece of tape that's as long as a cow. Let's find some things in our classroom that do that. Or if it's numeracy, right? So, or whatever the standard that's listed. I mean, I think one of the good things about the way this integrated curriculum operates, it's a nice problem to have, that there's so many standards that can be addressed. We can only pick two. So yeah, it's a really great testament to that idea. We're gonna move through real quick, but again, this is all in the slide deck. And I think one of the things that we'll do at another training, or something that you can all do in professional learning groups, is when you're planning the weeks ahead, to kind of like look ahead at the centers and think about mathematizing them for your classroom. In all the lessons, it usually does say in there, gives a couple of suggestions, but again, it's going to probably be more hardy if it's based on what you see. We talked about in the building blocks teacher guide, there's a section on math throughout the year. And some of those you'll see, some of them sound like the old ones that you've done before, but again, it's important to, again, make it a daily experience for kids. Here's a couple number stories where the number is 4 and the kids will tell a story using the number 4, right? And so, and the dictation that they're quick stories when they first come in. Oh, I saw four people walking down the street. Looks like 4 dogs. They ran into 4 dogs, 4 flowers, but they have to use that number in the story that they tell. Over here to the right, I think a lot of people have done before, counting jar, where, and again, there's that little 10 frame that kids can kind of check their number. Here over here, where they can record their answers. Over there on the right is a visual that we have in the curriculum to help children who have some language delays. And again, part of what you want to do with these routines is you want to keep complicating it. So for example, kids understand how to do the counting jar pretty early on. You might want to, at some point, add a second counting jar where they're adding the numbers, again, not large numbers, but 2 counting jars together, where they're graphing the contents of the counting jar. So it's not just, let's count how many, or guess how many. What if another way to complicate it is to be like, okay, write the number that's in the counting jar and a number that's 1 more. So the number is going to be a little more, or 1 less, or 2 more, or 2 less. So again, you're going to keeping it novel, keep making it, you can compare. In one counting jar, you can have 5 tennis balls, and in another counting jar, you have 5 marbles. Are they the same? You can kind of get kids to sort of see. Maybe you'll be able to tell who's understanding conservation there. Okay, so we are quickly using cutout raindrops. How many raindrops will it take to make a square, circle, rectangle, etc.? Yep, you can do that. Absolutely. You can take those. I love the idea that you can take in the block area. Let's make a structure, and then with just these rectangle blocks, can we duplicate the same structure just using little square blocks? Just using the triangle blocks, which you probably can because they all make up the same unit.
Sounds like what Shannon was talking about at the beginning of our time together this afternoon, actually. Yes.
Absolutely. So this is a section where we would be doing make and take, but since we're not there, we're not going to be doing that, but we will be sending you some of these that line up with the units. Some of them are pretty simple. I'm always a big proponent of simple games for kids to play. So, because again, that helps them think mathematically. And for this game, they're having to do the one-to-one correspondence because they're having to match this is also during the wind and weather unit where they're having to button up their coat. But you could also see how you could do this with numbers. So you could have dots on the dice and numbers on the coat. You could do uppercase, 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 lowercase, etc. Over there on the right-hand side is a 10 frame, which again, we saw the teacher using to do the number talk. But with your preschoolers, you might want to start with 5, just a 5 frame, maybe move up to a 10 frame as kids move along. But this one is it's on a whiteboard and using magnets so that they can move it around easily. You can use cookie sheets. I like putting this 10 frame up like on the vertical so that they can move the magnets around, almost like a refrigerator, right? So that they can use their arms up high rather than on flat on a table.
Put it on the underside of a table and line on the back.
Yeah, I love all that stuff too. All right, so we're pretty much right to the end of our time with you all. Again, this was sort of a very rapid zip through building blocks, but hopefully the main thing we hope that you take away from here is that, that it is a very hearty, engaging, and joyful curriculum or math instruction, teaching and learning in your classroom. So we're really excited that you're taking it on. This is the part where we have you guys fill out a reflection and feedback form for us. We sort of send that along as your attendance, unless Marissa, is there another attendance kind of sheet you need to fill out? You need folks to fill out other than that? Okay, great. So we've recorded this. We can stop recording now and we'll
Stop recording, stop sharing.
Yeah.
The whole bit.
Thank you.
Always sharing though. And so we will